Welcome to the Savvy Young Professional Podcast, episode number 16. What a great day to discover this show, because today we are talking to someone about one of the things that I think we all struggle with at one point, and that's finding a mentor. I really talked to you guys and really try to get some information and feedback on some of the things that you wanted to talk about, some of the things that you were struggling with or you couldn't get through, and mentoring seemed to be one of the main things that people really wanted to know about. So today on the show, I'm talking with Michelle Ngome from Line 25 Consulting, a consulting service based out of Houston, Texas. Michelle is an author, a coach, she is a speaker, and today we're going to talk about mentoring, and she's going to give us some ideas about how we can find a mentor, what type of relationship we should have with our mentor, and how to really make the most out of that relationship. Michelle is also the author of Network, Navigate, and Nurture, the equation to strategic networking. And so we're going to talk about some of the ideas that she discussed in her book as well. So thank you so much for discovering this podcast. And if you really want to know how to find a mentor, how you can up level, stay tuned. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I already gave a little bit of an intro about you, but I want you to go ahead and tell everybody just a little bit about you, your background, and how you kind of got where you are today.
Definitely. So I am in Houston, Texas. I operate Line 25 Consulting, a professional development firm, and we focus on digital marketing as well as networking strategies. And what that entails as far as the marketing is, pretty much self-explanatory, specializing in LinkedIn, assisting with other social media platforms for small businesses and those that have strong personal brands. And then on the networking side, I was fortunate to write a book called Network, Navigate, and Nurture, the equation to strategic networking. And from that book, I've been able to assist individuals on coaching as far as crafting their elevator pitch, making sure their message is consistent and translated, not just verbally, but as well as online, especially with LinkedIn. And if they're trying to grow their personal brand, whether they want to get a new job, internal or external, as well as transition to entrepreneurship, grad school, whatever the case may be. So I help people come up with different networking plans depending on the transition they're going on in life. And overall, I have a degree in finance that I almost forgot about. I have a second degree in internet marketing from Full Sail University, but my corporate experience is in finance. Been fortunate to work with JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, as well as Invesco Investment Services. But at the end of the day, I love people. I'm fascinated by people. And that's what I enjoy most about being an entrepreneur and having my freedom and being able to talk to whomever, whenever, about whatever.
Yeah, that absolutely sounds very liberating, freeing, and that's a pretty interesting background. So you know a lot about mentoring, I'm sure, because you've definitely, I'm sure, through your career have had some people to kind of help you and guide you. And so that's kind of what I want to get into today. I know that we've had a previous conversation where we talked about mentoring, and it was really interesting because that was just a question once I polled a few of the people that I know that they were having some issues or just wanted to know more information about. And you talk about that in your book, Network, Navigate, and Nurture. So the first question I kind of have for you is that in your own experience, what was some of your first experiences with having a mentor or finding a mentor? And just tell us about that.
Yeah, so my first mentor, her name is Samandra DeMons, and I was maybe 12 to 13 years old. I was in the 8th grade, and meeting her was just so pivotal because I left the environment where I was living with my mom in Texas, and then I moved to Atlanta to live with my dad and his wife, and it was definitely a culture shock. Like, I was used to being the only black girl in class with a handful of black people in the school, and moving to Atlanta where it was nothing but black people at the school. And I met her through a post-secondary education program. And I really feel like she was a person that was attentive. Like, I don't think anyone else knew, once again, like, transitions are so pivotal in life. No one really understood what I was going through, but she was the person that took the time to kind of listen. And growing up, it was always like, I was always cognizant of my actions because of her advice, right? And even though there was a gap from, I'll say maybe a 15-year gap when I didn't have a mentor, everything about her resonated, right? And what I realized with networking and mentors, it minimizes your transitions in life. Even though that the relationship with her is old, now that I'm an adult and I have this new mentor, there's qualities that I experienced with her that I was looking in the workplace, right? As a student in grad school, transitioning to entrepreneurship. And you begin to realize that you need a support group, whether that's one person or a group of people. And then when you get into becoming a professional or an entrepreneur, you kind of want to have a tighter support group, maybe an advisory board. So there are several things that I've experienced from a young age up to now as an adult, as far as qualities that I look for in a mentor, and I understand like why I need a mentor regardless of the age. It's always good to have that person on your right-hand side.
That is a really interesting perspective because a lot of the times when we get to certain points in our careers and we're like, we don't really realize, I think, where we had mentors and maybe just didn't know what to call them. So that was really interesting that you can recall having someone in your life that you can now say, with your knowledge of what you know about mentors, that was a mentor to you. And
Right.
so tell me how that translated into your mentors as an adult. What is it that you sought out or you were looking for in someone when you realized that you needed the relationship that you had as a young kid, but now in your adult life?
That's the thing about life, right? Because obviously, as a preteen, it's like I'm able to be grateful for that experience now. So some of the things that I look for and that I expound upon in my book is someone that has good work-life balance. Okay. Because although everyone's situation is different, you do want to be around people that you feel like they can handle themselves in any given environment. So my situation is kind of tough. My current mentor is Daryl James, and he's about 15 years older than me, 12 to 15 years older than me. So with him being a guy, it brings a whole new perspective to my world. At the same time, he is older and he's married, so we don't share a lot of the personal experiences. But at the end of the day, I like how he carries himself, and he becomes very insightful on how he does manage his business, his marriage, as well as his family as a whole, including the kids. And that gives me perspective onto, okay, it is possible, it is manageable. In a sense, I can have it all and not drive myself crazy.
I like the way that you put that you were able to look at the situation you have with your mentor, and you have age difference and gender difference, but you look at some of the qualities that he possesses and you can relate in some way, whether that is somewhere that you want to be or somewhere that you are currently. So that's really interesting. So it kind of goes into the next question, or we'll just go ahead and put this out here. If someone is listening to this show right now and they're listening to your story and they already know that they need a mentor, what are some of the first things that they need to do as a professional to find someone who will be able to help them or even meet some of the needs that they might have?
I think the first thing is you need to know what you need and want. What is your goal? And the reason I say that is because everyone is busy, right? Regardless if you're a student or have a multi-million-dollar company, everyone's busy. And I think we as people, we're willing to help, but it is frustrating when someone comes up to you and they're like, I need help, but they don't even know what they need help with. And a lot of the people that I have met, they would say that, not necessarily to me, but if they're giving speeches because I'm in a leadership program, whatever the case may be, like, I don't mind helping you, but you need to know what you want. That way I can be like, hey, you need to call this person, this person, this person. I'm going to set this meeting for you. bam, it's done. But if you're dragging your feet, most mentors are not going to take that time to really nurture the relationship from the beginning, right? They want to deal with someone that is very direct and they know what they're looking for. So definitely know that. Know what type of qualities, what type of personality that you work well with other people in general. At the same time, as African Americans, I feel like we do have to be open-minded when it comes to race and gender. Like my best friend, she's a senior auditor for one of these major companies, and one of her mentors is an older Caucasian guy. But the dynamics of the relationship are great. So definitely be open-minded with that and find someone that has a good personality. I think those are the biggest things. Oh, and then a network. Make sure this person has a strong network, because that goes back to the first thing. Know what you want to do. What is your ultimate goal? So if you kind of know maybe what specific jobs or industries you need to target, you want to see if this person is in that industry and they're able to open up those doors for you. Because once again, it's about minimizing those transitions that you're going to experience in life.
Absolutely. I agree with that. One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting that you said was just the understanding that the mentor can be anybody, and it can be definitely someone from a different background, different age, different race, different sex, whatever, as long as you know what you want and you can find that person to match up. Now, you mentioned that, and one of the things I wanted to touch on is as far as the age, because I know that a lot of people might have the misconception that a mentor has to be older because they have been through different things. But can you tell me what your thoughts are on age differences when it comes to mentors, and do you think that matters?
I actually do think it matters. I think that's a great question. In my opinion, it does matter. I try to hang out with people that are about 5 to 10 years older than me. And then I have my best friend and a few other people that are like 5 years younger than me, right? And there's just certain things I don't do because I'm older than my younger friends. And there's things that I'm learning from my older colleagues. So I feel like at the end of the day, you got to realize the personality. You have to be flexible in any environment. And you want to make sure that you're giving and receiving respect, right? So lots of times people, when you're young and you're in an environment that's older or among people that are older, sometimes people don't feel like they're enough. Maybe I don't have enough experience to perform the job function, to ask a certain question, things of that nature. And you got to get out of your head. And if this person is willing to accept you for who you are and they're willing to provide information and resources to you, make yourself adequate, right? Make yourself open and available to receive that in order for you to get to where you're going. And at the same time, you can hand that off to someone younger. Like as my mentor is about 15 years older than me, I am a mentor to a high school student. So I believe in serving. So I don't feel like, find someone that overall just has a good personality you're going to gel with, regardless of the age. But at the same time, make sure that they understand you. They understand what's going on in society, in the world, when it comes to technology and social media, because all of that are big variables into what we're experiencing today.
So it sounds like your opinion is that maybe it does matter with age, maybe it doesn't, but the one thing you want to make sure is that the person is updated, in the know, knowing what's going on in the world, in their industry, so that
Right.
they can truly give you some of the impact that you might be thinking you would get from a mentor.
Right. To me, age matters, but at the same time, it's like flipping a coin, right? So you just don't know. I mean, and I think a good example would be Mark Zuckerberg, right? Like if he was within reach, this guy's younger than me, but obviously he has his business experience, his technology experience that I'm nowhere within, right? So absolutely, I can learn something from him.
Right. That's interesting. Now that is someone who I would, if I had the opportunity, I would be like, yeah, you could be my mentor. I don't care how old you are. Which is really interesting. I want to know, well, before we get into some other things, because I really want to touch on some of the stuff that you talked about in your book, but I was just having a conversation with someone actually today, a little bit before we met, about paying for a mentor. I know that's the new trend now. I see it all the time. I know people who provide mentor services and they actually provide them at a cost. I want to know what your thoughts are on that and if you think it's legit.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, once again, this is my opinion. I believe in serving, but I guess when you say that question, I feel like mentor is a key word, right? So it's kind of like, do you want a mentor or do you want a coach? Okay. Now, if you say I'm a business coach, okay, I'm going to be prepared to pay you. I'm going to be prepared to ask for your rate and come up with the money. But if I ask you, can you mentor me? I'm thinking, hey, we can touch base once a month over the phone, grab a cup of coffee. So no, as far as using that word and creating a business around it, I don't agree with that personally. I will say this, regardless of the situation, if someone is older or younger than you and you need the advice of this person and you want to ask for the mentorship, I do believe you should initiate the offer, but hey, why don't I buy you a cup of coffee sometime? Can we get together? I believe you should initiate that, paying for the coffee or the meal, the lunch, whatever the case may be. And in most cases, depending on the dynamic of the relationship or the person, they probably won't pay, or they won't allow you to pay, or they'll pay Dutch, whatever the case may be. But creating a business model around it, I'm not for that.
That's interesting. I agree. I totally agree. I think the thing about being a mentor and even being on the other side as a mentee is that a lot of people don't understand that it has to be a give and take. It has to be a win-win. When people are giving up their time and they are going to accept you and say, I will serve as a mentor for you, there's work that you have to do on your end. And
Right.
so therefore, I don't agree with paying for it, because at that point, if I'm paying you for something, then I don't think the relationship is, to me, validated by advice and guidance and life experience, because those things I shouldn't have to pay for. I totally get it, and I just want everybody listening to the show to realize that there is a difference between a mentor and a coach. And before you go out there and you're looking for someone, you need to understand that if it's someone who you look up to, maybe they're really big in business, or it's someone you follow that you maybe have access to, you need to understand if they're offering a product or a service as a coach, 9 times out of 10, it's going to take a lot of work for you to get them as a mentor, because they already offer coaching services. And so that is leading me kind of to my next question. If, let's say someone, Michelle, they did all their research, they know who they want to talk to, they have their eye on someone that they really think they want to maybe serve as a mentor for them, and they've done the work, they've initiated the contact. What are some of the things that they need to do to make sure that they actually get that relationship going and that it gets to a point of calling it an actual mentorship?
You have to ask, whether it's business or dating, right? You have to ask for the business card. You have to ask for the phone number. You have to ask. So I feel like lots of times, just because you're seeing, okay, this is a good example, especially if you're working with someone, right? You work for the same company, and maybe you have this person that's 2 years your senior as far as title is concerned. Yes, you do have access to them, but that doesn't really mean they're mentoring you. That doesn't really mean they're nurturing you along the career path you are trying to get. So I feel like you have to ask. That way the relationship becomes very intentional. The advice becomes very intentional. So you have to ask, will you be my mentor? Are you willing to be my mentor? And I feel like there's a clear understanding. And when that person come back, ask you like, well, what are you looking for? You can say, well, this is what I need help with. I'm looking to go into grad school. I don't know which grad schools to go to. Maybe I need a letter of recommendation, right? I'm looking to launch my business. How can I do that? You have this person in your network. Can you connect me with this person? So there's so many things, and I feel like you have to be prepared for that if they decide to ask you any questions. And at the same time, like, how often do you want to see this person? Is it phone calls, texts, once a month, things of that nature?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely great advice to ask. And it happens like that. I mean, think about the sales world. It happens like that. People don't close the sale. They don't ask for the money. They don't ask you to buy the product. And it's really interesting to see in real life. And sales is a perfect example because
Mhm.
I've seen it time and time again. I mean, I've seen people, they wine them, they dine them, they give them product demonstrations. I mean, they are pampering. They're doing all of these things, but the thing that they're there for some reason, we've been trained or primed not to ask. And I'm the type of person in my life, in my situations, if you don't ask me, you're just not going to get it. You know what I mean? And if you ask me, hey, would you try this? Would you buy this? I will heavily consider it because it takes a lot to ask. And like you said, it's intentional. At this point, I don't have to wonder what your goal or what your ideas were. I know that you want to sell me something or you want me to mentor you or whatever. So I think that's a really solid advice, and I hope that people take something away from that in any part of their life, and especially when you're talking about a mentor relationship, because they are giving you their time, and that is what you're asking for. You're asking for their time and their attention. So, in your book, you talk about things that people, or some qualities that people can have to enhance the relationship with a mentor. One, it was actually a couple. So it was cordial and aggressive, focused and consistent, and then open and available. Can you talk to me about a few of those qualities that you think a mentee should have?
Right. So the reason why I say cordial and aggressive is because, as we stated earlier, everyone's busy, but you have to ask, right? So you have to ask, hey, can we have breakfast on Friday morning? What's a good time we can meet next week? And then that goes into being open and available, right? Based off of their schedule. I mean, like you said, you just have to ask, but you still have to be nice about the situation. It's the old cliche, closed mouths don't get fed, right? There's no way I can help you, advise you, or assist you if you don't ask. And I think even if you do ask, like, hey, can we meet next week? And they're like, oh, no, I'm out of town. Like, is that it? Do you just drop the ball? And once again, this goes back to sales. Everything goes back to the follow-up, right? So it's like, okay, all right, well, let me follow up in 2 weeks. When's a good time? So that's what I mean about being cordial and aggressive. And then when they are available to meet, are you going to be open and flexible to meet them based off of when their schedule permits?
Absolutely. That's really interesting. One of the things that I try to do when I do build those kind of mentor relationships where I am the mentee, I always follow up with a date and time, and I definitely always thank them for their time because everybody's selfish with their time, and we think about
Mhm.
ourselves. I mean, you think about it. If someone calls you 15 minutes before you're about to leave and say, hey, I need this or I need that, you get annoyed. You do. And so I think when you give that level of respect to someone, it's appreciated. And I think if you're asking someone to give you their time, their expertise, their resources, their network, you've got to be respectful of their time and you've got to thank them. And so that's something that I want you to kind of address. We've kind of gone through the motions. We've done our research, we got our mentor, we asked, we were aggressive, we have the relationship, we've met a few times or on the phone, Skypes, whatever. What is some of the things that a person should do to make sure to keep those relationships strong and to make sure that both parties are getting some kind of value from the relationship?
That's a great question. And it's funny because it's like you're asking me that question. I feel kind of selfish right now, considering my mentor, as he's ventured into some new opportunities. So he's been like more busy than what he was before. But, I actually text him. Anytime I have good news, I just text him, because we have that kind of relationship. And a prime example, I was fortunate to interview George Frazier, older gentleman, I think he's 70 years old, who really introduced networking into the African American community. But that is something my mentor put in my ear. So that was like my homework, right? He was like, research George Fraser. I did that. I bought the book. So I was like, hey, I bought George Fraser's book, every little thing. And I was like, when I was ready, I was like, do you have contact with him? And he was like, let me check. No, I don't. I said, okay. I was like, don't worry, I get it. I was like, okay, I just got contact with George Fraser. And he's like, all right, cool. What are you going to do now? Keep pushing. So I was like, I'm working on it, And then I was like, hey, I scheduled the interview. So I think those are the little things, right? The little celebratory moments that we, one, need to give ourselves, but at the same time, share with your mentor. That way they are able to see the progress that you are doing. And once again, that goes back to like, why do you need a mentor? What is your goal? And when you do have that sit down with them and they're giving you advice and homework per se, are you really following up on that? And I feel that if you give me some advice today and then I text you next week, like, hey, like what you said works and I made this progress, I would like to think, yeah, I want to spend some more time with Michelle because she's about action, right? She's about her business. So I think those are the key things that are able to keep the mentor-mentor relationship strong. And at the same time, one thing I do when I end meetings, depending on the dynamic of the meeting, I always ask, like, what can I do for you? And don't ever feel like you're less than, right? Because there may be something that you can offer that you have no idea. And I think especially for people that are like 35 and younger, a lot of older people are struggling with social media. So maybe you can help them on a specific social media platform or whatever the case may be. So don't ever feel like you're less than, and make sure that you open your resources to your mentor, whether they're older or even have more experience than you.
Wow, yes. That is really solid advice. I think that you touched on a lot of things that I think people should realize and think about as they begin to build these relationships, because one of my big things is time. And time is something that you cannot get back. There's nothing you can do to get it back. You can get money back, but you cannot get time back. And so when you are out there looking for a mentor and searching for someone, you want to make sure that you respect the time that they are giving you and thank them. I think the people that I have either served as a mentor to me or has taken any amount of time out of their schedule, and sometimes it's just one time, I've always followed up with a thank you note, and you'd be surprised how many times I get back, wow, I can't believe that. I never see this. I never see handwritten notes. Can't believe you took the time out to send this to me. And it's really interesting because I feel like they gave me more value, but it's something about writing a handwritten note and sending it and saying thank you for your time that really solidifies those relationships. And so I thank you for mentioning and touching on some of those topics. Is there anything else that you want to kind of give as some last minute, maybe insider tips?
Well, there's two things I definitely want to mention. One is maybe it takes a while to find a good mentor, so be patient with that. Don't feel that just because this person has a certain status that they should be your mentor. Once again, you definitely want to scout them out. Consider it like an indirect interview. See what they've done. Do your homework. See what they've done in the business community, the community as a whole, whatever the case may be. And as you are looking for that mentor, maybe you might want to go within your circle among your friends and have an accountability partner. And just be like, hey, this is what I'm going through. Can we take time once a week to have a phone call? That way we can touch on the status, my progress regarding my education or my business. So definitely start out with the accountability partner before you go looking for a mentor, or while you're looking for a mentor or even a business coach. And then the second thing is, I believe in virtual mentors. So a virtual mentor is someone that maybe they're a celebrity, a thought leader, some type of person of influence. And of course, they're not within reach, right? As I gave the example of Mark Zuckerberg. But this is someone that you can go on YouTube and watch all their videos. You can go to their website and read their content. Maybe you can buy a book or two, something, right? But they're pouring into your life. So also be open to having virtual mentors that can help you within your professional development.
Absolutely. That is great advice. Okay, Michelle, so one of the things that I like to ask my guests when they're on the show is if they knew then what they know now, what are some of the things that you would have done
Oh,
different
okay.
or lessons that you learned?
I don't think I was patient with myself in corporate America. Once again, I worked with some great companies, but I was at Citigroup for like less than a year, maybe 10 months. I was at JP Morgan Chase for 3 years, and I was at Invesco Investment Services for 2 years. And every situation was different. But the thing is, I think I'm a quick learner. However, I wasn't moving at the pace that I wanted to. And at the same time, I didn't have anyone, I didn't have a manager or anyone senior really encourage me and just be like, be patient. Why don't you try this out? Do this, look into this department. I didn't have any of that. Now, I had people like, they would vouch for me. They were like, well, why don't you go for this? I'll put in a good word for you. I was like, okay, cool. And the things worked out, but there was never that nurtured relationship before or after that specific event. So I really wish I kind of had a go-to person to really help me understand the dynamics of that specific company while I was there. And then from the company, understand the industry, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as an entrepreneur with a great mentor, oh my God, like my mentor, Daryl, let me just say, I've been in rooms that I shouldn't have been. I had no business being there. But because of him, I was accepted, right? And I would just sit there and listen to these businessmen talk and absorb, go home, write notes, not even go home, leave there, sit in my car, try to type everything on my phone that I can remember and absorb it. Like, okay, how can I apply this to my situation? How can I apply this to my business? And I feel because of that exposure, those relationships, those introductions, I should say, has allowed me to create relationships that have translated into giving back to another small business owner, being able to get advice from this person, being able for me to skip this hurdle and kind of plateau in different directions. And I don't know if it's because entrepreneurship, like it's my company, it's my baby. I'm just a lot more patient naturally. But at the same time, I also have him encouraging me. I have that cheerleader being like, hey, keep doing it. Fall forward, fall forward. And one thing I learned from him when he would say fall forward, it's not about win and lose. It's about win and learn. And as long as you fall forward, you can get back up and keep going. And that's what I've been doing for the past 2 going on 3 years.
Wow, that's awesome. Such good advice in that answer. So if you feel like you need to rewind that, go ahead and do it. Well, Michelle, I want to thank you for coming on the show today and giving people advice on mentorship because I know it's hard and it's so necessary sometimes when you're trying to take your career or your business to the next level. And I hope that someone listens to the show and finds value in the show. But I want you to let everybody know where they can find you and really let them know where they can find your book because it's really a good book and it's something that I think people will be able to relate to, especially if you're just starting or if you're transitioning your career. Tell us a little more about where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me online. My website is michellengome.com, which is Michelle, Michelle, Ngome, Ngome.com. Pretty much the handle for Instagram and Twitter. As far as my book, it's called Network, Navigate, and Nurture, The Equation to Strategic Networking. It is available on Amazon. If you are able to email me, if you go to my website, email me, I can send you a free copy as a PDF. I'll be glad to get that out to your listeners that email me.
Thank you so much. Well, I will definitely put all of the information that you mentioned in the show links. And thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. Wow, great information from Michelle. If you like the show, if you learned something from the show and you really want to go back and listen to it again, make sure you head over to thesavvyyoungprofessional.com where you can find all of the show notes, all of the links mentioned in this podcast, and all of the resources mentioned in this podcast. I want to thank you again for listening to the show. Make sure to tune in. And guess what? If you decide that you really like the Savvy Unprofessional podcast and you don't want to wait until the next episode, you don't want to have to search, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you're on iTunes, the button is purple. Go ahead, hit that so that when a new episode comes out, you will be the first to know. If you're using another player such as Stitcher, there's also subscribe buttons on there. And if you're just listening from your computer, make sure to sign up on our mailing list so that I can let you know when a new episode comes out. Thank you once again for listening to The Savvy Unprofessional. Make sure you check out thesavvyYP.com for all of the latest updates on The Savvy Unprofessional. Keep it savvy, YPs.